Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Never in a million years I would have thought that they were going to charge me for Sells' murder. I never talked to no detective, no police officer, no DA, nobody.
Just arrested and then charged.
Arrested and charged, that's it.
Was the first time you saw Kamala Harris in person the day that the verdict was issued?
She showed up at the two most pivotal times in this first trial, and me being convicted and me being sentenced. She wanted to be present for a celebration of a conviction.
That's what it felt like, a celebration?
A celebration, that's what it felt like. The reactions I get when I tell people my story is, they say it's the worst nightmare. You know, it's the closest thing to dying.
When we invest in clean energy and electric vehicles and reduce population, more of our children can breathe clean air and drink clean water.
Tomorrow I shall outline what I conceive to be a sound and compelling American agenda for this new world order. For across the planet today, we find ourselves confronted not by an ideological threat or an expansionist design of a military power, but by the rising tide of global problems that threaten mankind's very survival. We face a tidal change we can hope to manage only through the spirit and mechanisms of international cooperation. The full panoply of threats to our future security and prosperity, the proliferation of deadly high-tech weapons, the accelerating degradation of our planetary environment, economic protectionism and unfair competition, overpopulation and migration, narcotics and aid. These all require, Mr. President, global solutions. Overpopulation, global solutions. Overpopulation, global solutions. Fortunately, the American people comprehend this reality, and precisely for that reason, they expect to see the strong hand of American leadership in world affairs. The United Nations, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, the Marshall Plan, the World Health Organization, and a host of other worthy UN agencies.
When we invest in clean energy and electric vehicles and reduce population, more of our children can breathe clean air and drink clean water.
About 5 or 6 California DOJ agents started stomping through my apartment. Some of them were armed with AR-15s, some of them had canine dogs with them. Kamala Harris is the single greatest threat to First Amendment civil liberties that our country has ever seen. April 5th, 2016. This is an idyllic Southern California spring day. As I'm walking out to take the kitchen garbage out, I turn around the corner and pass a big white windowless van. All of a sudden the door swings open and this tall uniformed guy steps out and he has a piece of paper in his hands and he says, "Are you David Daleiden?" And he says, "I'm with the California Department of Justice. We have a search warrant for your home." And he hands me the warrant. And I think to myself, oh gosh, what's going to happen next? So about 5 or 6 California DOJ agents started stomping through my apartment. The other 5 of them standing on the lawn outside. Some of them were armed with AR-15s. Some of them had canine dogs with them. They had come for me. In 2013, I began and orchestrated an almost 3-year-long, very in-depth, comprehensive investigative journalism study about the harvesting and trafficking of body parts from late-term abortions. There's multiple violations and multiple issues that you very quickly start to learn about when you look into it. There's the basic problem of selling body parts, where you're basically creating a system, creating transactions, creating business relationships that incentivize the objectification and the destruction of human beings in order to keep the business going. So for about 30 months, we went undercover with the explicit purpose of partnering with some of the biggest Planned Parenthood abortion clinics in the country to send their technicians in, harvest body parts from the abortions that were being done that day, and then package up the parts and ship them off to different customers all around the country, sometimes around the world. In July of 2015, we began to release the Undercover video series. I had been hoping that this was something that would, that would maybe generate 100,000 views or something. Instead, what happened was even bigger than I could have imagined. Within less than a week, we had close to 3 million views on YouTube of the first video, and multiple congressional committees announcing that they were launching federal investigations of Planned Parenthood's involvement in fetal trafficking and fetal experimentation. The truth got out there, and the words of Planned Parenthood's own leadership describing their organization's participation in these activities went viral and was being publicized for the whole world to see. Looking back on it from the information that we know now, I now know what was going on was that Kamala Harris, at the explicit instruction of Planned Parenthood, had targeted me, and me alone, among all undercover video news gatherers in the state of California, to enforce the California video recording law against me and to punish me for speaking the truth about her powerful campaign donors at Planned Parenthood. What we've come to learn in the years since, just 2 weeks before serving the search warrant on my home, Kamala Harris had a secret meeting in Los Angeles with several top-level executives of Planned Parenthood in California. We then found out from the California DOJ investigator reports that Planned Parenthood's top lawyer in California had specifically instructed the California DOJ agents that Planned Parenthood wanted the video equipment and the computers that I was using to publish the videos to be seized, in order to shut me up, in order to prevent me from continuing to publish the truth about Planned Parenthood's involvement in fetal trafficking, and in order to punish me for speaking out with a message that was disfavored by Planned Parenthood and by Kamala Harris in the state of California. I think what people have to understand about organizations like Planned Parenthood and about their political backers like Kamala Harris is that they're shameless, and they will do whatever they have to do in order to promote their agenda. They'll say whatever they have to say, and they are not afraid to use every bit of power at their disposal to force their agenda through. Kamala Harris is the single greatest threat to First Amendment civil liberties that our country has ever seen. If Kamala Harris is elected to be a heartbeat away from the highest office in the United States of America, you will have someone in the White House who has a radical contempt and disrespect for First Amendment civil liberties, someone who believes that she's entitled to use the powers of her office in order to punish the viewpoints of citizens who disagree with her.
If you have not yet been vaccinated, you know, some people said, I'm gonna wait. I wanna wait and see how this all turns out, how everybody else is doing with it, right? So I'm gonna give it 6 months. It's July. It's time. It's time. So it is time, and it is time to roll up your sleeves and get the shot. And if you already have, find someone who hasn't and help them. And talk to them as we are having this conversation now. Born out of love, born out of concern, and born out of knowledge, again, that it will save lives. You know, a couple weeks ago, I was down in Atlanta at Ebenezer Baptist Church. And it was good to be back there. And the church, of course, you all know this is the church where Dr. King preached. Until the day he died. And today, it is a place of worship, but as most places of worship, also a place of healing. It is a vaccination site. Then and now, a place of healing. And when I was there, I talked with a bunch of folks, and in particular, I met with a bunch of folks who had just been vaccinated, and the healthcare workers who administered the vaccines. And I said then, what I will repeat today, I do believe that the act of getting vaccinated is the very essence of what the Bible tells us when it says, love thy neighbor. Right? Because what we know is, one can ask, well, who is one's neighbor? Is it the person who lives to my left, lives to my right? I know them, may borrow a cup of sugar, right? But what we know it means when we talk about love thy neighbor is that, yes, it may be the person next door, and it may be the man on the side of the road, and it may be a perfect stranger. And in the face of that stranger, you see a friend. That's what this is about. And so by getting vaccinated, you are loving your neighbor.
Network for network.
How are you?
We met before.
Yes.
According to the Harris campaign spokesperson on X, the vice president's network came through for her to the tune of a near $50 million overnight. In 24 hours, the campaign sits at more than $81 million.
We're turning it up.
Today, Rocky Mountain NAACP President Portia Prescott is at the Denver State of the City. But last night, she was on a call with 44,000 other black women. Win with Black Women, a community organization, says it raised $1.5 million during the 3-hour call.
From the moment of the announcement, those women went into action. Not only did they go into action, but they're inspiring us all to go into action.
Prescott's connection to Harris is more than just being a black woman. They both share sisterhood in Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated.
We've got her back. So, because through her, we see ourselves there.
Prescott's ready to take a position she's familiar with, standing next to Kamala Harris, this time as president.
We came together to make history already once, to making her the vice president, and now knowing we can come together, the first and finest, AKA, to bring her back, bring it on home. It is like the most amazing feeling ever.
She says Harris's networks
Gonna be too.
will motivate voters to take her all the way to the White House again.
You never in the world imagined that the first woman president would be a black woman, and now that it's here, oh, we're gonna carry it to the finish line.
Today, the National Panhellenic Council of Presidents announced a collective call to vote for its members. Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated operates under the NPHC umbrella, along with 8 other sororities and fraternities. Together, the NPHC has several hundreds of thousands of members across the world. In the studio, Janelle Finch, 9 News.
You think back to 4 years ago when the AKA's here, I mean, they hit the ground running, talk about a grassroots efforts, and that's when she was just on the ticket as a vice president. So you know, AKA's Kiwi, we are coming out in full force, and that's just what they do, you know?
Yeah, social action is a huge pillar of all of these organizations,
That's
so
right.
it's absolutely no surprise that they were backing her then and that they're going to back her now, and it's collective across D9 that everyone's behind her.
Yeah.
I know you did a story on that, AKA, and tell us more about it. So for those that aren't familiar with the sorority, it's a force.
It is, and DST, right? If
Yes,
I'm not
correct.
mistaken. Okay, see, sisters, we come together in times like this for sure. But I think Janelle put it perfectly when it comes to philanthropy. Like, that really is the pillar of being a part of an organization, especially a Black sorority and fraternity. So I think we're going to see, everybody come together in a way that maybe we haven't before, because there's never been a candidate in this position.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely going to be really interesting, not only to see Harris as she continues on, but how these organizations back her.
Yeah, so it'll be a part of the story, I think.
Janelle, thank you. That's great. Thank you.